At one point this weekend, you said that Bitcoin, and this was basically, you were asked, Charlie said Bitcoin's like rat poison. You were asked about that comment, and you said, well, it's probably more like rat poison squared.
Useless, unsafe, and dirty.
That's the Bank of Central Bankers slamming Bitcoin in a 24-page report questioning the validity of cryptocurrencies.
He is an expressive sort, isn't he? Maybe when he gets a little older, he'll mature.
Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, especially when you compare it to the price of gold. BIS says it's because cryptocurrencies lack a central body which is dedicated to keeping the currency stable.
It's wonderful because it does create a rising price, does create more buyers, and people think, I've got to get in on this, and it's better if they don't understand it.
Bitcoin claims that it's the first decentralized peer-to-peer payment network that is powered by its users with no central authority or middlemen. That lack of central authority is the primary reason governments are afraid of the cryptocurrency. To understand this fear, it's important to know a little bit about governments and conventional currencies. So let's take a look at why Bitcoin will destroy the banking system as we know it. Without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Fiat is a term used to describe the conventional currencies that are issued by governments. Fiat currencies have value because governments say they do. To an increasing number of people, that promise means nothing. After all, fiat currencies are not backed by tangible assets. You can't return the currency to the government in exchange for a bar of gold or silver, a can of beans, a pack of cigarettes, or any other items that might have value to you. Fiat currencies are backed by the full faith and credit of the government that issued them, and nothing more. If you want gold, silver, beans, or smokes, you need to exchange your fiat currency with a person or entity that possesses the item you want. Governments control fiat currencies. They use central banks to issue or destroy money out of thin air, using what is known as monetary policy to exert economic influence. They also dictate how fiat currencies can be transferred, enabling them to track currency movement, dictate who profits from that movement, collect taxes on it, and trace criminal activity. All of this control is lost when non-government bodies create their own currencies. Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer currency, which means that there isn't a need for middlemen, in this case, the banks, unlike current physical currencies, and therefore is a threat to the currency system.
Here's what's going on, is that Bitcoin itself is an existential threat to the central bankers. That's what this was designed. It was designed as an alternative financial system. With Bitcoin, you don't necessarily need a central banker. If you want one, go have a ball. But in the Bitcoin cryptocurrency ecosystem, you don't need those central bankers. Not only that, Bitcoin is an alternative here. So it's the new guard versus the old guard out there, right? So this is kind of like when the newspapers went online. All the newspaper editors said, that's never going to work. New guard, old guard. And then finally, the difference here is what the whole thing about Bitcoin is peer-to-peer. It removes the middleman, and the middleman in this particular case is the BIS and the central bank. So Bitcoin is like the Napster of money, and that's what they don't like about it.
Control over currency has many downstream impacts, perhaps most notably to a nation's fiscal policy, business environment, and efforts to control crime. Though each of these topics is broad and deep enough to fill volumes, a brief overview is enough to provide insight into the general concept. Bitcoin users don't need the existing banking system. The currency is created in cyberspace when so-called miners use the power of their computers to solve complex algorithms that serve as verification for Bitcoin transactions. These users are then rewarded with a cryptocurrency that doesn't need an intermediary to be passed between two or more users. If Bitcoin becomes extremely widely adopted, the entire banking system would become irrelevant. Though this may sound like a wonderful concept, in light of the recent behavior of the banking industry, there are two sides to every story. Without banks, who will you call when your mortgage payment is hacked? How will you earn interest on your savings? Who will assist when a transfer of assets fails or a technical glitch occurs? Though the financial crisis gave bankers an even worse reputation than they already had, there is something to be said for institutions that oversee timely, effective, and trustworthy asset transfers and their associated record keeping. There's also the issue of the fees banks earn for the services they provide. Those fees generate a lot of revenue and a lot of jobs across the global banking industry. Without banks, those jobs disappear, as does the tax revenue those banks and their employees' paychecks generate. Money transfer business would also disappear in a virtual world. Nobody needs a Western Union or its competitors if everybody is using Bitcoin. Before you convert your national currency to Bitcoin, you may want to consider a few additional facts. Bitcoin was created by an anonymous computer programmer or programmers. There's no consensus on this, and identities are still unconfirmed. The currency is digital, so there's nothing you can touch or hold. Its value fluctuates in a highly volatile manner. It is created by anonymous programmers through a methodology that is too complex for most people to understand, much less practice. Also, if Warren Buffett says that Bitcoin isn't worth it, as it's an investment that isn't creating anything, and if Warren, who is in the top 10 richest people in the world and has made his fortune investing, says that something ain't right, then there is certainly reason in believing him. Let's take a look at what he has to say.
When you buy a farm, you look at the crop every year and what prices are, and you decide whether it was a satisfactory investment. I mean, you look to the asset itself and what it produces for you. When we buy a business, we look at what the business earns and decide how we feel about it in terms of what we paid. But we are buying something that at the end of the period, we not only have what we bought in the first place, but we have something that the asset produced. And when you buy non-productive assets, all you're counting on is whether the next person is going to pay you more because they're even more excited about another next person coming along. But the asset itself is creating nothing. One of the interesting things, for example, is gold. If you go back to the time of Christ and you look at how many hours of labor you had to give up in order to buy an ounce of gold, and you take it forward to now, you'll find the compound rate maybe 1/10 or 2/10 of 1%. And then you have to insure it during that time and make sure somebody doesn't steal it from you and everything. But it doesn't produce anything. And productive assets, you can pay too much for a productive asset. But I bought a farm in the 1980s, and every year look at how much it produced with soybeans and corn. And at the end of that period, I've still got the farm, and I've gotten some significant income off of it. Apartment house, operating business. But if you and I buy various cryptocurrencies, they're not going to multiply. They're not going to be a bunch of rabbits sitting there in front of us. They're just going to sit there. And I got to hope next time you get more excited after I bought it from you, and then maybe I'll get more excited and buy it from you. And actually, we could sit in the house by ourselves, and we could keep running up the price between the two of us. But at the end of the time, there's one Bitcoin sitting there, and now we got to find somebody else, and they come to an end.
So what does the future hold for Bitcoin and other virtual currencies? Is it safe to say that they're here to stay? But should you invest in them? Are they worth it, or will they bring more harm than good? Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. I personally think that yes, they are worth it, but a balance must be held. Anyway, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell for further updates.